Something happened in a place where humans were the weakest species alive. Dragons ran everything. They owned the buildings. They made the rules. They hired the workers. And every single human who walked through those doors knew one thing for certain. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't get involved in things that don't concern you. Marcus Carter knew that rule better than anyone. He had worked at Veldrath Industries for 3 years. 3 years of fixing machines, carrying tools, and staying invisible. 3 years of watching dragons walk past him like he wasn't even there. That was fine. That was the deal. Humans worked. Dragons ruled. Simple. But on one Tuesday morning, something happened that would flip his entire world upside down. A small dragon hatchling sat crying in the middle of the workshop floor. She was tiny. Her blue scales were shaking, and in her little claws was a broken wooden toy. A small rocket ship, snapped clean down the middle. Every dragon in that building walked past her. Not one stopped. Not one looked down. Not one said a single word. But Marcus stopped. He didn't know who that hatchling was. He didn't know who her father was. He didn't know what fixing that toy would cost him. He just knew that a child was crying, and nobody was helping her. What happened next shocked everyone at Veldrath Industries, and the truth behind it. That will shock you too. Today, on HFY to CIFI, we bring you a story about one simple act of kindness. About one human who did what no dragon dared to do. About a broken toy. And about the enormous, terrifying, and ultimately breathtaking cost of caring when no one else does. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Marcus Carter was not the kind of man people noticed. He was 26 years old, medium height, brown hair, quiet eyes. He wore the same gray-green jumpsuit every single day. He carried the same tool bag every single morning. He punched in at 7:45 am and punched out at 5 p.m. He ate his lunch alone, usually sitting beside the old generator on level 2, where it was warm and nobody ever came. He worked at Veldrath Industries, a massive facility on the outer edge of the Draken district. Most people called it the Forge. They called it that because of the deep metallic hum that never stopped. Not even at night. The kind of place that felt alive even when it was empty. The company made parts, engine cores, stabilizers, deep field relay units, things that went into ships, things that went into stations, big things, expensive things, things that kept the galaxy running. And at Veldrath Industries, the ones who ran everything were dragons. Not the fire-breathing kind from old human stories. Real dragons. The kind that stood 8 feet tall on 2 legs, with sharp-scaled arms and heavy tail muscles, and eyes that burned like cooling coals. The kind that never raised their voice, because they never needed to. One look from a dragon in management was enough to make your stomach drop to your knees. The boss of the entire facility was a dragon named Valdrek Sorn. Nobody called him by his full name. Everyone called him Director Sorn. He was enormous. Dark gray scales that almost looked black under the forge lights. Yellow-gold eyes that never blinked long enough to feel comfortable. He moved through the building like a slow storm. Quiet but heavy. Careful but dangerous. Humans who got called into Director Sorn's office did not come back smiling. Marcus had seen it happen twice. Both times, the human walked out white-faced and silent. One quit the same day. The other transferred to a different section and barely spoke for a month afterward. So Marcus followed the rules everyone understood without saying out loud. Don't stand out. Don't make noise. Fix what needs fixing. Move on. He was good at his job. Genuinely good. His hands were steady and his mind was sharp. He understood machines the way some people understand music. Naturally. without thinking too hard about it. He could hear when something was wrong with an engine before any sensor lit up. He could feel vibration patterns in metal walls and know exactly which relay was loose 2 rooms over. His supervisor, a middle-aged dragon named Gorvin, had noticed this, but Gorvin never said much about it. He would leave work orders on Marcus's screen. They would get done perfectly, and that was the entire relationship. That was life at Veldreth Industries for Marcus Carter. Until the Tuesday morning that changed everything. It was early, maybe 20 minutes before the main shift started. The forge wasn't at full noise yet. Some sections were warming up. The hallways still had that early morning feeling, wide and hollow. Marcus was walking level 3, heading to service coolant panel near the eastern end. Tool bag over one shoulder, coffee in his other hand, thinking about the coolant panel, just the coolant panel. And then he heard it. A small, soft sound, half cry, half whimper, the kind of sound that is quiet but somehow cuts right through background noise like a needle through cloth. He stopped walking. He looked left. He looked right. He looked down. There, sitting right in the middle of the hallway floor, was a dragon hatchling. She was tiny, smaller than he expected. Her scales were a bright, vivid blue, the kind of blue you see in deep water. Her wings were folded tight against her back. Her golden eyes were wet. And she was staring at something in her hands. In her small claws, she held a wooden toy. A rocket ship. A beautifully carved one, with little fins and a painted nose cone. Except right now it was in 2 pieces, snapped clean at the middle. The 2 have sat in her palms like something that used to be whole and couldn't understand why it wasn't anymore. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't throwing a fit. She was just sitting there, looking at the broken thing, with tears sliding quietly down her blue-scaled cheeks. 2 dragon workers walked past her. They didn't slow down. They didn't look. Their heavy boots clicked on the floor, and they were gone around the corner. A 3rd dragon came from the other direction. Also walked past. Also didn't look. Marcus stood very still for a moment. He looked down at the hatchling. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was too busy looking at her broken toy with that quiet, heartbreaking expression. Marcus took one more step forward. And the hatchling looked up. Her golden eyes met his. Wide, wet, not afraid, just waiting, like she had been waiting for someone to stop for a long time. And she wasn't sure if he was going to stop either. Marcus stopped. He put his coffee down on the floor beside him. He set his tool bag down slowly, careful not to startle her. And then he lowered himself until he was sitting cross-legged on the level 3 hallway floor, right there in the middle of the morning, in his work uniform, with a coolant panel waiting on him 2 halls away. He held out one hand, palm up, not demanding, not grabbing, just offering. "Can I see?" he said. The hatchling looked at his hand. She looked at his face. She looked at the broken toy in her claws. And very slowly, she placed both pieces into his palm. Marcus turned the broken toy over in his hands. It was a wooden rocket ship. Handmade, clearly, not factory-produced. Someone had carved this by hand, sanded it smooth, painted it carefully. The nose cone was a deep red. The body was warm wood brown. The fins were thin and detailed. There were even tiny painted windows along the side. It was beautiful. Or it had been. The break was clean, right at the middle joint where 2 pieces had been fitted together, likely with a wooden peg. The peg had snapped. Both ends of it were still there, half in each piece. Marcus looked at the break for a long moment. He understood it immediately. The peg needed to be replaced or reinforced. a thin line of strong adhesive along the joint. 2 minutes of careful work, and this toy would be whole again. He looked up at the hatchling. She was watching him. Her golden eyes hadn't blinked. Her little wings were pressed tight to her back like she was bracing for bad news. "I can fix this," Marcus said quietly. "I have glue in my bag." The hatchling stared at him. She didn't speak, but her wings loosened just slightly, like tension leaving her small body. Marcus reached into his tool bag and found what he needed. He always carried a small tube of industrial-grade bonding adhesive. Not the heavy stuff, a lighter precision grade that he used for delicate component work. Perfect for wood. He had just opened the tube when he heard footsteps behind him. Heavy ones. Dragon footsteps. He didn't turn around immediately. He kept his hands steady and began carefully applying the adhesive to the clean break edges. Even pressure. Thin coat. The way you do it when you have done it 1,000 times. Human. The voice was deep and flat. Not hostile. Just large. The kind of voice that fills a hallway without trying. Marcus looked over his shoulder. It was Drevak, one of the senior foremen from Level 2. Tall, dark green scales, heavy arms, clipboard in his left hand. He was looking down at Marcus with an expression that was hard to read. "What are you doing?" Drevak asked. "Fixing a toy," Marcus said simply. He turned back to the hatchling. Drevak was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know whose hatchling that is?" "No," Marcus said. Still working, lining up the two halves carefully. Another pause from Drevak. Longer this time. "You should probably leave it," the foreman said. Marcus didn't answer right away. He pressed the two halves of the toy together, held them firm, applied light, even pressure, counted slowly in his head the way he always did when working with fast-setting adhesive. "Why?" he asked, not looking up. Drevak made a low sound in his chest. Not angry, more like uncertain, like a large creature that didn't quite know how to explain something small. "That's Director Sorn's hatchling," Drevak said. Marcus stopped counting for exactly 1 second. Then he kept going. Director Sorn, the head of the entire facility. The dragon whose office nobody wanted to be called into. The dragon with the black-gray scales and the cold gold eyes. That Director Sorn. Marcus looked down at the tiny blue hatchling sitting in front of him. She was watching the toy in his hands with total focus now. She had moved slightly closer without seeming to realize it. Like her body was leaning forward on its own, pulled by hope without permission. Marcus thought about what Drevak had said. "Leave it." He looked at the hatchling's face. She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at her toy, at the two halves he was holding together, watching to see if they would hold. He held them for another 10 seconds. Then carefully, slowly, he released the pressure. The toy held. He turned it over once, checked the joint. The bond was clean, strong, invisible from most angles. He picked up the small tube and applied one thin reinforcing line around the outside of the joint. Smooth, careful. Then he held it again. The hatchling had moved even closer. She was maybe 2 feet from him now. Her nose was almost level with his hands. She was breathing slowly, watching. Drevak was still standing behind Marcus. He hadn't left, but he hadn't said anything else either. Marcus waited the full curing time. It only took about 60 seconds with this adhesive. He used the time to check the rest of the toy. Fins were solid. The nose cone was fine. The painted windows were slightly scuffed, but nothing structural was wrong. When the joint was fully set, he held the toy out to the hatchling. Whole again. The hatchling looked at it, then at him. then add ear again. And then she reached out and took it from his hands. She held it up, turned it slowly. The nose cone caught the light. The fins were perfect. The break was gone. Her golden eyes got very wide. And then Director Sorn's daughter made a sound Marcus had never heard a dragon make before. She laughed. It was a small sound at first. A short, surprised little exhale that became a giggle that became a real, bright, full laugh. High and clear, like something musical filling a hallway that was used to nothing but boot steps and machine hum. Marcus smiled without meaning to. The hatchling clutched the toy rocket to her chest with both claws. She pressed it against herself like she was afraid to let it go again. Her tail swept back and forth on the floor behind her. Her wings fluttered open and closed. She looked up at Marcus with those wide golden eyes, and in them was something so simple and so pure that it landed somewhere in the center of his chest like a warm stone dropping into still water. Relief. Pure relief. There you go, Marcus said quietly. Good as new. Behind him, Drevek made a small sound. The dragon version of a cleared throat. A low harmonic rumble in the chest that in different situations meant different things. Right now it meant something like, I cannot believe I just watched that happen. Marcus picked up his tool bag. He capped the adhesive and zipped it back into its pocket. He picked up his coffee from the floor, stood up slowly, dusted off his knees. The hatchling was still holding the toy, looking at it, then looking at him, then looking at it again, like she was still processing the fact that someone had stopped and helped, and that the world had been that simple. Take care of it, Marcus told her. He didn't know if she understood full human speech yet. Hatchlings varied, but she watched his face carefully when he spoke, and there was something in her eyes that said she understood enough. He nodded at Drevek, picked up his tool bag, and walked off down the hallway toward the coolant panel that had been waiting on him since 7:45. He didn't look back. Drevek stood there for a moment longer, looking at the spot where Marcus had been sitting, then looking at the tiny blue hatchling on the floor, pressing her repaired rocket ship to her chest. The hatchling looked up at Drevek. Drevek said nothing. He turned and walked away. Marcus reached the coolant panel at the eastern end of level 3. He pulled out his diagnostic scanner and got to work. The panel had a partially blocked secondary feed line, exactly what the system report had flagged. He cleared it in about 12 minutes, ran a pressure test, confirmed the fix, logged the work, and moved on. He had 3 more jobs that morning. A ventilation relay on level 1. A lighting fault in storage bay 7. A cracked exhaust fitting on one of the small transport sleds in the south yard. He completed all 3 before lunch. He sat by the old generator at midday, the same as always. Unwrapped his sandwich, drank the rest of his now-cold coffee, watched the light change along the far wall of level 2 from that warm morning gold to the flat white of midday. He thought about the hatchling once or twice. Just briefly, the way her wings had pressed tight when she first looked at him, the way they had loosened when he said he could fix it, the way she had laughed. He hoped nobody would get angry about it. He hadn't thought about that while he was actually doing it. He had just seen crying child and done the obvious thing. But now, sitting quietly with his lunch and the low hum of the generator, he turned Drevak's words over in his mind. Director Sorn's hatchling. He took a slow breath. He had touched Director Sorn's daughter's toy. He had sat on the floor of level 3 and glued it back together. No permission. No announcement. Just a human worker and a tube of bonding adhesive and 60 seconds of curring time. He couldn't tell if that was a problem. He decided not to think about it too much. It was done. The toy was fixed. The hatchling was happy. Whatever came next would come. Worrying right now wouldn't change anything. He finished his sandwich. Afternoon shift came and went. Marcus completed 2 more work orders without incident. Nobody said anything to him. Gorvin left his usual notes on the screen for the next day. The forge hummed its deep, constant hum. Everything felt completely normal. He punched out at 5:01 p.m., walked to the transit station 2 blocks from the facility, rode home. He ate dinner, read for a while, went to sleep. The next morning, he punched in at 7:45 am, the same as always. He was halfway to his first job of the day when his communicator buzzed. One message. Short. Formal. It read, emphasis report to Director Sorn's office. 9 am. Mandatory emphasis. Marcus read it twice. Then he put his communicator back in his pocket and kept walking. Word travels fast inside a place like Veldrath Industries. By 8:15 am, at least 6 people on level 3 knew that Marcus Carter had been called to Director Sorn's office. By 8:30, it had reached level 1. By 8:45, people in the South Yard knew. The Forge was not a large city. It was a closed world. And in closed worlds, stories spread the way smoke spreads through still air. Quiet, but everywhere. Most people heard the basic version. Human maintenance worker. Fixed the director's hatchling's toy. Got summoned to the office. Nobody quite knew what that meant. But the version most people told each other had a worried ending. Kale, one of the human workers on level 1, found Marcus near the water station at 8:20. You got the message, Kale said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Marcus said. Kale looked at him for a moment. He was older than Marcus. Mid-40s. Had worked at Veldrath for 7 years. He knew the rhythms of this place better than most. What did you do exactly? Kale asked. Fixed a toy, Marcus said. Kale rubbed the back of his neck. Drevak's been talking. He said you just sat down on the floor right there and did it. In front of everyone. There wasn't really anyone watching, Marcus said. There is now, Kale said quietly. Marcus drank from his water cup and didn't say much after that. He finished his 7:45 job. A filter replacement on level 2. It took him 20 minutes. Routine. He was precise and calm, the same way he always was. His hands didn't shake. His mind didn't race. But as he packed his tool bag and headed toward the main corridor, he became aware of something. People were looking at him. Not staring. Nothing that obvious. Just small glances. A half-second of eye contact that cut away fast. A pause in conversation as he walked past. The particular quality of silence that forms around a person who everyone knows is walking toward something uncertain, and they don't know how it ends. Even some of the younger dragon workers glanced at him as he passed through the level 2 junction. One of them, pale green hatchling barely old enough to be working, watched him for a solid 3 seconds before a coworker touched her arm and they both looked away. Marcus kept walking. At 8:55, he stood outside the director's office. The door was large. Everything about Director Sorn's section was large. The ceilings were higher here. The corridor was wider. The lighting was darker, warmer, less industrial, more deliberate. Like the space itself understood that something significant lived inside it and had adjusted accordingly. There was a receptionist. A small, silver-scaled dragon named Vess, who Marcus had seen from a distance a few times, but never actually spoken to. Vess looked up when Marcus approached the desk. Marcus Carter, Vess said. Yes, Marcus said. Vess glanced at the screen, tapped once, and looked back up. He's ready for you. The door opened. Marcus walked in. Director Sorn's office was enormous. High ceilings, wide windows looking out over the full spread of the facility below. Machines and structures and walkways that looked small from up here. The forge from above. It was actually beautiful in a way Marcus had never noticed before, because he had never seen it from this angle. Director Sorn was standing near the window. Not sitting. Standing. Which made him look even larger than usual. 8 feet of dark gray and black scale. Broad shoulders. Arms crossed loosely across his chest. Gold eyes looking out over his facility like someone surveying something they have spent a long time building. He didn't turn around when Marcus entered. For 10 full seconds, nothing happened. Marcus stood near the door. He didn't fidget. He didn't look around. He just waited. Then Director Sorn turned. He looked at Marcus the way large things look at small things. Not meanly. Not aggressively. Just with the natural weight of something much bigger examining something much smaller. Like a mountain noticing a stone at its base and finding the stone worth noticing. The silence held for another long moment. Then Director Sorn said, "You fixed my daughter's toy." It was not a question. Marcus held his eyes steady. "Yes, sir." Another pause. The director's gold eyes didn't move from Marcus's face. "You know who I am?" the director said. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "And you did it anyway." Marcus considered this for just a second. "She was crying," he said, "and no one was stopping." Director Sorn said nothing. The silence that followed was the longest Marcus had experienced in that office, maybe in any room in his entire life. He had no idea what was coming next. Director Sorn moved to his desk. He didn't sit behind it. He stood to the side of it, one large hand resting on the edge, looking at Marcus with those impossible gold eyes. The room was quiet enough that Marcus could hear the far-off hum of the forge below. That deep, constant sound, the heartbeat of the building. It felt strangely steady in that moment. Grounding. "Tell me what happened," Director Sorn said. "All of it." Marcus told him. Plainly. Simply. The way he reported anything at work. He was on level 3 heading to a coolant panel job. He heard crying. He found the hatchling sitting on the floor with the broken toy. Nobody was stopping. He examined the toy. He assessed the break. He had the right adhesive in his bag. He fixed it. He went to his job. Director Sorn listened without interrupting. His expression didn't change. But he was listening. Marcus could feel it. The quality of attention in a large, intelligent creature who has chosen to focus entirely on what you are saying. When Marcus finished, the director was quiet for a moment. "Drevak told you whose hatchling she was," he said. "Yes, sir." "Well, I was already working on it." "And you kept working?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Marcus thought about this honestly. "Because stopping halfway didn't seem like it would help her," he said. "The toy was already apart. If I stopped then, she would have been sitting there with a broken toy and a started repair that went nowhere. That's worse." Something moved in Director Sorn's eyes. It was subtle. Marcus couldn't name it exactly. Not quite surprise. Something behind surprise. Something older and quieter than surprise. Most humans, the director said slowly, would have stopped the moment Drevak spoke. Most of them probably would have, Marcus agreed. But she was right there. Director Sorn studied him for another long moment. Then he walked to the far side of the office, where a low shelf sat against the wall. Marcus hadn't noticed it when he entered, but now he saw what was on it. The rocket ship. The repaired wooden rocket ship, sitting on the shelf like a small trophy. Clean and whole, the fins catching the light. Director Sorn looked at it for a moment, then back at Marcus. Her name is Lyra, he said. She is 3 years old. She does not let most people hold her toys. Marcus didn't say anything. He just listened. My mate carved that rocket before she passed, the director continued. His voice didn't change in tone. Still low, still even, but the words themselves had weight. Each one placed carefully, like something precious being set down on glass. It was the last thing she made. Lyra carries it everywhere. She has since she was old enough to hold it. Marcus felt the full meaning of that land slowly. The toy hadn't just been a toy. It had been the last physical piece of someone who was gone. Something a child 3 years old carried with her because she understood, in the way that very small creatures sometimes understand without knowing how. That it mattered. That it was precious. That breaking it would be like losing something more than wood and paint. And it had snapped in two. And she had been sitting on the floor of level 3, alone, holding the 2 broken pieces. And every dragon in the building had walked past her. Except one human with a tube of adhesive in his tool bag. Marcus kept his face still, but something tightened quietly in his chest. I didn't know any of that, he said honestly. I know, Director Sorn said. He looked at the rocket ship for one more moment. Then he turned back to Marcus. That is exactly why I asked you here. He walked back to his desk and sat down. For the first time since Marcus had entered the room, the director looked slightly less like a monument and slightly more like a person. A very large, very powerful person. But a person. Your performance record, Director Sorn said, gesturing at his screen. 3 years. 0 incidents. Above average diagnostics. Your foreman consistently approves your work without secondary review. Marcus said nothing. Just waited. There is a position opening in the Advanced Systems Division, Director Sorn said. Senior Technician. Level 1 clearance. Higher pay grade. More responsibility. More complex work, he paused. It requires an endorsement from director-level employee to qualify. Marcus absorbed this. The director looked at him calmly. Do you understand what I am telling you? I think so, Marcus said quietly. I want to be certain you do, Director Sorn said. What you did yesterday cost you nothing. But it meant everything to my daughter. And to me. He leaned forward slightly. I am telling you that I see you. Marcus Carter. I am telling you that what you are is worth considerably more than what you have been given. Marcus walked out of Director Sorn's office at 9:43 a.m. He stood in the corridor for a moment. The wider hallway. The warmer light. The high ceiling. He could still hear the forge humming below. Still that same deep, constant sound. Unchanged. Like it had no idea what had just happened inside that office. Vess, the silver-scaled receptionist, glanced up at him as he passed the desk. And then, in a small gesture that was quick enough to miss if you weren't paying attention, Vess dipped her head slightly. Not a full bow. Just an acknowledgement. The kind of thing you do when you want to recognize something without making a large performance of it. Marcus nodded back. Then he walked to the elevator, rode down to level 2, and went to his 10 AM work order. He told Kale at lunch. Not all of it. Just the shape of it. That the director had spoken to him. That there was a position. That things might be different soon. Kale looked at him for a long time without speaking. Then he said, You really just fixed the toy. I really just fixed the toy, Marcus said. Kale shook his head slowly. But he was smiling. A real smile. The kind that happens when something turns out better than anyone expected, and you didn't let yourself hope for it, and now you don't quite know what to do with the feeling filling up your chest. Only you, Kale said. The endorsement came through 3 days later. Official. Formal. on Director Sorn's personal authorization. Marcus read it twice on his work screen, alone in the maintenance bay, standing in his gray-green jumpsuit with his tool bag on the floor beside him. Senior Technician, Level 1 Clearance, Advanced Systems Division. He sat with that for a moment, the quiet of the maintenance bay around him, the smell of oil and metal, and the distant warmth of active engines. He thought about the morning on Level 3, about the sound of crying cutting through early morning quiet, about sitting on a hallway floor and opening a tube of adhesive, about a small blue hatchling pressing a repaired rocket ship to her chest and laughing for the first time in what looked like a very long time. He hadn't done it for this. He hadn't done it expecting anything. He hadn't done it knowing who she was, or who her father was, or what any of it would mean. He had done it because a child was crying and nobody was stopping, and the distance between walking past and sitting down was about 3 feet and 60 seconds, and one simple decision. But the world, it turned out, notices these things. Not always, not loudly, not immediately, but sometimes, in the right moment, in the right place, someone with the power to see clearly is watching. And what they see matters. On his last day as a standard maintenance worker, Marcus finished all his work orders. He completed them the same way he always had. Careful, precise, no shortcuts. He logged everything cleanly. On his way out, he passed through Level 3. It was almost end of shift. The hallway was emptying out. The overhead lights had shifted to their evening tone. Slightly warmer, slightly lower. He was almost to the exit when he heard footsteps. Small ones. Fast. The quick, light tap of tiny claws on floor panels. He turned. Lyra came running down the hallway toward him. 3 years old. Bright blue scales. Golden eyes. Wings half spread the way hatchlings run, using them naturally for balance without even knowing they're doing it. And in her claws, held tight against her chest, was the rocket ship. She stopped about 4 feet away from him, looked up at him, breathing fast from running. Then she held the rocket ship out toward him, not giving it to him, showing it, the way children show you something important. The way they hold things up and look at your face to see if you understand. Look at this. Look at what I have and what it means. Marcus crouched down until he was at her level. He looked at the toy. The repair was still clean, still solid. The joint was invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. The fins were still perfect. The painted windows still slightly scuffed but standing strong. He looked at her face. She was watching him with complete seriousness, the full weight of a 3-year-old who has decided something important. Then she smiled, the full, deliberate, certain smile of a young creature who has decided that you are trustworthy and wants you to know it. The kind of smile that does not come often and cannot be faked. She turned and ran back the way she had come. Small feet on the floor. Wings bouncing. The rocket ship held tight. Marcus watched her go. Then he stood up, picked up his tool bag one final time as a maintenance worker, and walked out of Level 3 into whatever came next. He had fixed a broken toy. He hadn't known the cost. But as it turned out, the cost was something he could live with just fine. Now here is the part of this story that most people miss entirely. Most people hear the ending and think the point is that Marcus got promoted. That doing a good thing led to a good reward. And yes, that happened, but that is not actually what this story is about. Here is what this story is really about. Every dragon in that hallway saw exactly the same thing Marcus saw. A crying child, a broken toy, an empty floor around her. They saw it and kept walking. Not because they were cruel, not because they were bad people, but because they made a calculation. She belongs to the director. It is not my place. Someone else will handle it. Stay out of it. But Marcus did not calculate. He just saw a child who was crying and stopped. And that is the thing about humans in stories like this one. And maybe in real life too. There is something about human beings, at our very best, that skips the calculation. That does not ask who does this belong to. What will it cost me? Who is watching? That just acts. Quietly. Without announcement. Without knowing what comes next. The broken toy in this story is not really a toy. It is every small moment in your life and mine where the easiest thing was to walk past. Where stopping required nothing but a decision. Where help was within reach and all it asked was 3 feet and 60 seconds. And here is the final unexpected truth that closes the loop on where we started. Director Sorn never told his daughter who fixed her toy. Lara was 3 years old. She did not think about it in those terms. But she remembered the human. She found him on his last day. She ran down that hallway. She held up the toy. She did not need to know his title or his pay grade or his clearance level. She just knew he was the one who stopped. In a world where power is measured in scales and fire and height and authority, a small creature picked out the one quiet human who sat on the floor and cared about her. If this story opened your eyes to something, even something small and simple, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. The next story coming to this channel will take you somewhere even further. Something older. Something deeper. Something even more powerful. You are not going to want to miss it. Before we close this story out, let us take a moment and talk about what just happened here. Because this story, at its heart, is really about 3 things. First, it is about invisibility. Marcus Carter was invisible for 3 years. He did exceptional work, and nobody above him celebrated it. That is a real experience for real people every single day. You show up. You do the work better than required. And the world moves around you like you are simply part of the scenery. Marcus never let that invisibility make him stop caring. And that matters more than anything else in this entire story. Second, it is about the power of small choices. Marcus did not charge into anyone's office demanding recognition. He did not give a speech. He did not make a scene. He sat on a floor and used 60 seconds and a tube of glue. Small choices made quietly in the right direction are still choices. And they still move things. Sometimes they move things in ways you cannot predict and would never have planned. Third, it is about what humans bring to a universe that has decided they are the weakest species in the room. Not the biggest bodies. Not the sharpest claws. Not the most fire. Just this one thing. The willingness to stop. To see. To help. To not calculate your way out of caring about someone right in front of you. These 3 things together are why this story lands the way it does. They are also why stories like this keep getting told, keep getting shared, and keep reaching millions of people on channels just like this one. Now here is what I want to ask you directly. If you are watching this for the first time and you are not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button right now. Every single week on this channel we bring you the very best HFY/SCIFI stories from across the galaxy, narrated for you with full cinematic energy. Stories about humans who surprise the universe. Stories about moments where being human turns out to be the most powerful thing in the room. If you are already part of this community, do one thing for me right now. Hit that like button. It takes literally 1 second, and it helps this story reach more people who need to hear it today. And here is the community question I want you to answer in the comments right now. If you had been walking down level 3 that morning, and you saw that small hatchling sitting alone on the floor with her broken toy, what would you have done? Would you have stopped? Would you have kept walking? Would you have looked around to see if someone else was already handling it? Be honest in the comments. There is no wrong answer here. because your honest answer is actually the beginning of knowing yourself, little better than you did before you clicked play. And finally, when you are ready for the next story, the one waiting for you in the recommendation above is about a human soldier who said just 2 words in an intergalactic diplomatic meeting and accidentally became a living legend on 3 different planets. Don't skip it. We will see you there.